Hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to dive into the year 1996 and the summer movie season that was completely out of control in the best possible way. Twister was throwing cows across the Midwest, Will Smith was punching aliens, Tom Cruise was Tom Cruising, and Arnold was king. Then, right in the middle of all that, a 31-year-old Michael Bay releases his second movie, a film about rogue Marines taking over Alcatraz, threatening San Francisco with nerve gas, and forcing the FBI to team up with the only man who ever escaped the island alive. It's loud, ridiculous, and a whole lot of sincere. And 30 years later, I still think it's Michael Bay's best movie. This is the film that turned Nicolas Cage into an action hero. It gave Sean Connery's most famous spy a whole new layer of fan lore, and somehow made glowing green anal beads look like the scariest party favors in cinema history. But before we dive in, I'd like to thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please hit like, subscribe, and hit that hype button. It helps small content creators like me get out to your screens. And hey, while you're at it, maybe stop on over at the EZ shop and check out some of my merch. I really appreciate it. Alright, let's get into it. This is EZ Reviews The Rock, 30th Anniversary. The Rock hit theaters on June 7th, 1996, and opened at number 1. It made over $335 million worldwide, which is wild for an R-rated action movie about Alcatraz, betrayal, and VX gas. The premise is clear and clean, and that's one reason the movie works so well. The plot goes like this. General Francis X. Hummel, played by Ed Harris, leads a group of Force Recon Marines onto Alcatraz Island. They take 81 tourists hostage and threaten San Francisco with stolen VX gas rockets, all in an attempt to have the government pay $100 million to the families of soldiers who died on secret missions and were never recognized. Alcatraz, of course, was built to keep people in, so sneaking back into it is nearly impossible. The FBI needs someone who knows the tunnels, the cells, all the weak spots in the guts of the place. And that man is John Mason, played by Sean Connery, a British intelligence operative who in 1962 stole microfilm full of dangerous secrets and got locked away without a trial as a result. He would become the only person ever to escape Alcatraz, theoretically. But Mason can't disarm chemical weapons, and for that they need Dr. Stanley Goodspeed, played by Nicolas Cage, an FBI chemical weapons expert, Beatles obsessive, and nervous soon-to-be father. Connery is all dry wit, old scars, and suave brevity. Cage is panic, intelligence, and barely controlled weirdness. The usual. Goodspeed is not an action hero in the traditional sense. He's not special forces, nor is he a cop with nothing to lose. And he's definitely not Arnold walking around with mountains for biceps. He's just a scientist dragged into the most dangerous field trip in human history. And it's kind of crazy to think because initially, Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for the role. And on paper you get it. It's the mid-90s. Let's put Arnold in a movie with Marines, rockets, Alcatraz, and explosions. It's a license to print money. But Arnold passed. Years later, he said the script that he saw was around 80 pages and full of scribbles and handwritten notes. It just didn't seem like the movie was ready to go, and it turned him off. It's probably the best thing for it. The movie is absolutely better because Arnold isn't in it. And don't get me wrong, I love Arnold, everybody loves Arnold, but if he were to walk into Alcatraz, I'm not worried about Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm worried more about Alcatraz. With Cage, there's a tension. Goodspeed feels like someone who could die any second. He survives through intelligence, nerves, and pure, eccentric electricity. Cage crafted a character who doesn't even swear in a rated R movie. No, instead he says things like gee whiz, gosh, and Zeus's butthole. He even tries to reason with men who have all decided that shouting and firearms are the only available language. Nicolas Cage, of course, had just come off of a Best Actor win for Leaving Las Vegas. And having collected that statue at the 68th Academy Awards in March of '96, he was a respected, albeit unpredictable actor. But he was not yet the action star that he would become. The Rock is the first step in that insane mid-90s Cage action trilogy that made him a star. The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off. 3 movies, 2 years, and the creation of a national treasure before he starred in the film National Treasure. Now put that guy next to Sean Connery, and the whole thing snaps into place. In The Rock, Connery plays John Mason like a man who's lived 5 lifetimes of classified information and has no patience left. He's dangerous, bitter, funny, and still somehow elegant after decades in a cell. The movie gives us just enough of Mason to make him fascinating, but then it leaves room for Connery's own screen history to do the rest, which brings us to the greatest fan theory and lore that you could ever imagine. For years, fans have argued that John Mason is actually James Bond. I mean, not officially, obviously, the lawyers would parachute through the ceiling. But as fan theories go, this one's got some legs. You see, Mason is a mysterious British intelligence operative. He has no official identity, and he stole microfilm containing some of the world's ugliest secrets. Resident D-bag character Womack even says that Mason doesn't even exist. And the movie specifically says he was incarcerated on Alcatraz in 1962, only to escape in '63. But do you know what else happened in 1962? That is also the year that Dr. No introduced Sean Connery as Ian Fleming's James Bond. So the theory goes like this. What if Sean Connery's Bond went on one too many missions? What if he learned too much, stole the wrong secrets, embarrassed the wrong governments, and got caught? Too dangerous to release, but too valuable to kill. So the respective governments buried him. No trial, no rescue, and no name. Just a cell and 30 years of silence. John Mason becomes Bond after the fantasy ends. James Bond is tuxedos and casinos, gadgets and fast cars. For Queen and country. Mason, on the other hand, is the old weapon nobody wants to admit they used. There's even a nice little Easter egg where Goodspeed introduces himself to Mason for the first time, only for Mason to reply, "But of course you are." Connery mirrored the same exact line from Diamonds Are Forever all those years ago. And it's exactly the kind of wink that keeps movie nerds alive. The smart thing is that The Rock never says it out loud. If the movie stopped and said, yes, this is James Bond, it would feel cheap. Instead, Mason stays in the shadows. He's not officially Bond, but he's almost like Connery's idea of who Bond would have become. The old legend after the tuxedo is gone. And honestly, if you want to watch The Rock as Sean Connery's unofficial final Bond adventure, I think it works. He escapes the prison of history, saves a major city, reconnects with his daughter, and disappears on his own terms. It's not really that bad of an ending. But The Rock isn't carried by Cage and Connery alone. Ed Harris turns the villain role on its head. You see, General Hummel could have been a cartoon villain. Angry military guy with rockets and hostages who gives big speeches and makes grand accusations. But Harris doesn't play him that way. Hummel is wrong, sure. He threatens innocent people and risks killing thousands. And the movie doesn't ask you to agree with him, but it asks you to understand how he got there. And the character arc that Harris goes through from beginning to end is honestly pretty astounding. The Rock is big and stupid in all the right ways, but it's not empty. It has soul, and the script itself has its own mythology. The credited writers were David Weisberg, Douglas Cook, and Mark Rosner, but The Rock became famous for uncredited work. Jonathan Hensley wrote the shooting draft and fought for credit. The great Aaron Sorkin has been linked to dialogue work. And it's even been rumored that Quentin Tarantino threw some work of his own in. And then there's Connery, who brought in frequent collaborators and British writers Dick Clement and Ian LaFrenize, just to sharpen Mason's voice a little bit and give him that Connery Bond feel. And I think you can really feel all that polish. The characters don't just dump plot, they snap, they posture, they push each other around. Mason sounds like he's permanently irritated, and Goodspeed sounds like the only normal man who's trapped in a room full of government insanity. And like I said, Ed Harris's arc, from villain to what he becomes at the end of the film, I mean, I don't want to give it away, but it's unexpected for a movie like this. And when you take that kind of style and creativity, you get something that really hits. The production has plenty of lore too. They shot on the real Alcatraz while the island was still open to tourists. So that gives it a little bit of texture. The walls look sick, the halls look haunted. You can kind of feel history pressing in from every corner. And then there's the famous Connery cabin story. For years, people repeated that Connery refused to take the ferry back and forth and demanded that a cabin be built for him on the island. Now, while it is a little bit of a myth, the real version seems to be that he wanted to anchor a yacht nearby but was denied, and so he used a trailer when he didn't want to go back to his San Francisco hotel. Still, the idea of the production building an entire cabin on the world's most notorious prison island, that just sounds like the magic of Sean Connery. And it's not just me who thinks that this is a great film. The Rock has real critical and cultural weight. Roger Ebert gave the film 3.5 stars and even wrote the essay for the Criterion release, which you don't often get to say when talking about a Michael Bay movie. The film was nominated for Best Sound at the Oscars, and Hans Zimmer's score became the kind of trailer music thunder that makes you want to salute the sunset. Bay gets mocked a lot, sure, and sometimes he makes that pretty easy to do. But in The Rock, the style works because the movie has an engine underneath it. It was a time when the John Woo aesthetic was all the rage. This is Bay before a heavy hand and heavy style swallowed movies whole. And behind all this is the producing power of Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson, one of the most defining producer teams of the 80s and 90s. I mean, we're talking Flashdance, Beverly Hills Cop, Top Gun, Days of Thunder, Crimson Tide, Bad Boys, and then The Rock. But sadly, Simpson died in January of '96, just 5 months before the movie came out. The film would be dedicated to his memory, the end of an era and the beginning of another. The beginning of Michael Bay as a full-blown blockbuster brand, the beginning of Nicolas Cage as an action hero, and maybe, if you want to believe it, the final ride of Sean Connery's most famous spy. 30 years later, The Rock still feels like a summer movie event. An R-rated, star-driven, original, funny, violent, sincere, completely over-the-top summer spectacle. A movie that still rocks. Sorry, the title left that one sitting there and I had to take it. But now I want to hear from you. Do you buy the John Mason as James Bond theory? What's your favorite quote? Where does this film rank among your 90s action movie favorites? Drop me a line in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed this. Subscribe for more. And as always, I'll see you next time.